Let's jump right into this explainer because we're looking at a locked room mystery where the killer wasn't a disease and, wasn't a predator either, but something far, far more profound. We're going to explore this wild story about what actually happens when everything is perfect and why that perfection might literally be the most dangerous thing of all. 0. That is exactly how many survivors remained out of thousands of mice placed in an absolute, flawlessly designed paradise. We're talking about a perfectly engineered utopia that somehow ended in total extinction. And the craziest part? The cause of death is something no toxicology report could ever possibly name. Section 1. The Perfect Mouse Paradise. The Origin of Universe 25. Okay, so to understand how this all happened, we have to travel back to 1968. There was this ethologist and scientist named John Calhoun, and he built his 25th and what would be his final utopian experiment for mice. He'd spent his entire career obsessed with one specific question, and he was determined to finally get a clean answer. He eliminated every single physical threat to survival. Unlimited food, perfectly stable temperatures, completely clean environments, absolute safety. It was the purest definition of an animal utopia, all to answer this: what happens to a society when nothing is hard anymore? Now, to put the scale of this into perspective, Calhoun designed this 9-foot square enclosure, complete with these intricate little walk-up apartments, to comfortably support exactly 3,800 mice. He calculated the exact dimensions needed for a sprawling, thriving society. But, well, spoiler alert here, they would never even come close to reaching that number. Section 2. The Great Behavioral Sink, a Psychological Nightmare. At first, things actually started off incredibly well with the initial 8 founders. The population just absolutely exploded, doubling every 55 days. But then they hit a terrifying wall at just 2,200 mice. That's way below the enclosure's actual capacity. And by day 920, reproduction just completely, entirely stopped. And the reason this happened is just deeply unsettling, because there was no new ground to migrate to, like there would be out in the wild. Young males lost their purpose entirely. With literally no roles left to fill in the social hierarchy, they just formed these listless pools of bodies in the center of the enclosure. And they would just absorb attacks. They wouldn't even try to fight back. This is such a brilliant illustration of the unnatural psychological shift that was taking place. Calhoun coined the term the behavioral sink for this. The presence of others became so intensely hardwired into their feeding instinct that empty, fully stocked feeders right next to them were just completely ignored. They had total abundance, but their social instincts were totally short-circuiting. From there, the social fabric just evaporated. We see this cascading breakdown in family structures. It got so severe that exhausted males basically just gave up, leaving heavily stressed mothers to defend and eventually abandon their own young. In some sections of this so-called paradise, fewer than 1 in 20 newborns actually survive to weaning. Section 3. The beautiful ones, the final generation. Out of all this chaos, a completely new generation of mice emerged from the surviving pups. Calhoun gave them this really haunting name, the beautiful ones. Now, these mice looked perfectly healthy on the outside, sure, but their nervous systems had developed in a broken world, where every social role was already taken. So what did they do? They simply opted out of the species entirely. They ate, they slept, and they obsessively groomed their perfect fur. And that was it. Calhoun profoundly noted that the mice had actually died 2 deaths. That first death, the death of their social spirit, their drive, their purpose, their actual reason to participate in life. That happened years before the physical extinction of the colony was finally completed in May 1973. Section 4. Misunderstood data, the wrong conclusion. So when this paper first came out, urbanists, politicians, the general public, they all immediately grabbed onto this really dramatic story. But the real tragedy is that they drew completely the wrong conclusion from the data. While the world basically decided that a life without struggle destroys itself, that, comfort kills, Calhoun actually concluded something far more nuanced. It was the disappearance of meaningful roles, not the abundance of comfort, that killed the colony. This quote, it really gets right to the heart of the mystery. It proves that once the structure giving each individual a reason to participate vanished, the whole society collapsed. The killer wasn't the free food, right? It was a society that had completely run out of purpose. They had endless food and water, absolutely, but nobody remembered to put a sense of purpose into the paradise. Comfort just removed the friction that made being alive actually feel like something. It left them completely hollow. Section 5. Creating new meanings. The human solution. And this brings us to the most vital part of this whole explainer. What Calhoun actually believed this meant for humanity, as a profound lesson on the importance of creating new goals and meanings for human life. See, unlike the mice, Calhoun was not a doomer. He argued that as physical space contracts, human beings can survive through something he called ideational generativity. By constantly generating new ideas, exploring new networks, and literally building new roles for ourselves, we continuously invent new reasons to be here. The mice didn't have a choice when they ran out of physical roles, but we are uniquely equipped to invent new meanings for our lives, even when our basic needs are completely met. We don't just have to rely on physical territory. We build intellectual and creative territories. We have the power to create infinite conceptual space. So the real question this entire experiment leaves us with isn't some dire warning about comfort, but a challenge about purpose. What new meaning, what new role will you build for yourself today? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I really hope it leaves you with a lot to think about.